Turn it in.
Can you hear us now?
Yep.
Apology for that slight delay. Okay, I'll move to those colleagues joining us online. Mary, we'll start with you.
So is this introducing ourselves, Makbuli?
Yes, we're just
Okay.
taking the brief introductions from
Okay.
everyone.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. I'm Councillor Mary Mason. I'm Councillor for Bounce Green Ward.
Councillor Lester
Thank
Buxton, Crouch End Ward.
Vanessa, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes, hi. I'm Vanessa. I'm a co-opted member of the panel. Parent.
Great, thank you. And also I can see Amanda. Yeah, Amanda, do you want to briefly introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Amanda Bernard, Chair of Send Power Parent Carer Forum in Haringey.
Also, Jackie is joining us online as well. Jackie.
Evening, everyone. Jackie Tafalka, Assistant Director for Early Help Prevention and Send.
Great. I think that's everyone. Thank you for that. Anne, you wanted to?
Chair David Archibald is online too. He's chair of the Safeguarding Partnership. Thank you.
Apologies, David, we missed you. Yes, can you, if you are online, if you can briefly introduce yourself.
Yes, hello there. Sorry, I couldn't hear anything for a moment, but I now can. My name is David Archibald. I'm the independent chair of the Haringey Safeguarding Children Partnership, and I'm here for the HSCP annual report item.
Great, thank you for that. Now we covered everyone. Just to note the item 1 on filming, joining the films, just that's for noting. Item 2, apologies for absence.
An apology for absence has been received from Yvonne Denny, who's the church co-opted representative on the panel.
Great, thank you. Any items of urgent business, item 3?
No.
Any declaration of interest? No. Sorry. Item 5, deputation, petitions, presentation and questions.
Nope, none of these.
Item 6, minutes of the last meeting. You will remember that our last meeting was a joint meeting with Adult and Health. I'm going to ask Rob on any of the updates on actions, as well as, and if you have any, the minutes.
I'm still waiting for responses to some of the actions arising. Once I've got them, I'll circulate them all together rather than separately.
Great, thank you very much. That any comments on the minutes? And no. I will move straight to the next item, item 7, cabinet member question from children and about children's schools and families. We've got Councillor Bravazon here, and this is an opportunity for us to ask her question and also to ask her to give us, like, if there's any development, any new kind of areas that she would like to share with us. Councillor Bravazon, I will invite you to give a brief presentation. Thank you.
Sorry, Chair.
No, just a brief outlining of what you will be, basically what have you been doing since last, if there's any areas that have come up, that new things that this committee is not familiar
Are you
with.
asking for a summary of what's been going on since
Summary
the
of
last
what's been,
meeting?
yes, please make it short because we want to
I
use
think
our
I'll give you
time
one
to
word.
make it
I'll give you one word.
quite
Ofsted.
yes, that's what we want to hear. Yes, so then we'll have an opportunity to ask question. Councillor Bravazon.
You've sent me 5 questions. Do you want to read out the questions for the purposes of people who might be listening to the meeting, and then I'll answer them? It says here they're from Lords.
Yeah. The
Yes.
first 3 are questions from other chairs. The first 3 questions are from other chairs, because usually I sort of ask the chairs meeting if they want to, and these are the 3 questions that have come from early years chairs rather than myself. All right.
Okay, Lords, do you have the question in front
So
of
it's
you?
why have the children's centres continued to be underfunded since 2017? That was the first question.
Well, the truth is that there hasn't been any more money to give additional funding to children's centres. You might recall that children's centres were subject to significant cuts due to all the austerity and so on, and that was back in 2016, 2017. And so there were, 16 centres at one point in the borough, and now there are 9. So that was a massive change, and that was caused by a reduction in government funding. So we are more fortunate, although it doesn't sound like it, than many authorities in retaining 9 centres, and we've tried to ensure that there's access across the borough for families from east to west, although I accept the west has got a sort of more dispersed model. So at the moment, there just isn't any more money in the budgets to increase the allocations to the children's centres. There is a review going on of children's centres. I think it's been a bit delayed, but it is, as you know, we've got an early years strategy. Early years has been a priority for this administration, and I hope that we'll get the outcome later in the spring. The issue is that whatever we do, the money is very constrained. So we will always do the best we can for the children's centres, whether they're attached to nursery schools or to our own provision or in a school. So it's not the happiest picture, but we still have our children's centres, which is more than can be said for many authorities.
Thank you. The second question is, why haven't officers planned accordingly to ensure a smooth financial transition from children's centres funding to family hub funding?
I think there is a bit of a misapprehension here, because the family hub funding is a different source of funding from that which we give to children's centres. So we're not going from one to the other. The family hub funding comes from central government, and it has very strict and rigid criteria that can't be used to fund existing services. So it's not replacing the children's centres, it's a bit of additionality. And we're the age range in the family hubs is from 0 to 19 up to 25 for special educational needs. And most of the money is allocated, most of the family hub money, if I'm right, and Jackie will correct me, is going to be for perinatal health. And I don't know the difference perinatal and antenatal, but you get the point. most of the money is actually targeted for the first 1,000 days of life. And that includes pregnancy in the government's analysis or terminology. The DfE have signed off a delivery plan, so we are quite constrained by how we can spend the Family Hub money. So there isn't a transition from Children's Centre funding to Family Hubs. The Family Hub funding, which is for 4 hubs in the borough, the Triangle being the first, is complementary, if I can put it like that. So I hope we will extend the whole the funding around the network in the located areas. As I said, the first one will be at the Triangle, be opening in June, and the other 3 hubs have yet to be determined. I hope that makes it clear, but I just think there's been a misunderstanding, and maybe it's our job to make sure people understand it better.
I mean, the third question is, when will there be a clear plan communicated about family hubs and the finance associated with them? You've gone some way to answering that, but I must say that in the past week, information has come out, and I've been to the Triangle myself, so I must admit, for the first time, and I think there's going to be a meeting with heads very soon about the family hub, but I think there's a lack of information in general about the family hubs and their purpose at the chairs meeting that I attend on a regular basis.
As you know, I will go to any chair of governors meetings which I am invited. I am still waiting for my invites, and then I'll go. Don't want to go where I'm not invited. But you know, we've got chairs groups and so on. And you know, I was at the governors' conference last week or so ago, and gave a presentation of what's going on in Haringey. And I think I did include family hubs in my presentation. So there is a communication engagement plan in place, but I do take the point that it's always important to make sure that what we think is communicating gets through to those people to whom we're trying to communicate. There was a public announcement, I think, in February. We've got parents group at the Triangle to support implementation of the first hub, and their first meeting is in April. And there's an engagement event on the 25th and 26th of April. And they said the launch is in June, and actually it's June 28th. And we're also commissioning a group and organise Better Decisions Together, which is some co-production way of working from a consultant, I suspect, to undertake 10 events across the borough around the family hubs, within the libraries, the children's centres, shopping city and so on, to raise awareness. But I think we have to keep telling people. We need to communicate it through the schools and so on. Obviously, I'll talk to the officers, make sure that we're doing that as effectively as we can.
I mean, just one thing. When I went into the Triangle, I mean, I've now been sent slides, and the slides are very good, defining the family hub, its purpose, etc. Now, I was told that this information has been sent out to schools, but I think we need to maybe get clarity from schools as to when people are sending out information to schools, who are they sending it to? Because I think that the Triangle could prove that they sent the information out to the school up the road where I'm chair, but it wasn't received by the head. So maybe that's something just to note, really.
Should just note it. I agree with you.
Yeah.
Do you want to turn your mic off? Do you want to turn your mic off, Lords?
Oh, sorry.
I think getting information to schools, I just think is sometimes quite complicated, because it depends who opens the email and whether it gets to the head, or whether the secretary opens it or the business manager. So when you assume it's going to the head, it may go to the head. The head may not send it on somewhere else, or they might. So it's, you know, you've got to make sure that the trail is pretty clear. And I think it is sometimes quite complicated. It doesn't mean people don't send information, but a lot's going on in school, and sometimes the information doesn't get around. Hopefully it will. So that's something to raise at heads meetings.
The other 2 questions are, what are the local authority plans as to how schools facing deficits can work in a more collaborative way?
This is a really big issue, isn't it? And we're working very closely with the schools that are already in deficit and with those who've had to use their reserves in the last financial year to set a balanced budget. But if you've got falling pupil numbers where money follows the child, that is quite a difficult task. And we know that some schools are seeing huge reductions in their budgets because of falling numbers. So trying to get balanced budgets is difficult, and some schools may not have reserves. So we have to try and work through all that. So I know that some schools are having particular help with their finances because of their situation. Where a school has a resignation of a head or a senior member of staff, it's our role to encourage governors to consider how they can move forward, especially if they're in big deficit. So to think about how they might collaborate or how they can do things in the short term or in the longer term. We're against a big background now of falling numbers, which is happening all over London. And I don't know if you've seen Schools Week, but you might want to read about Lambeth today. We need to support our schools in thinking about arrangements they can make that will keep them going, making formal, short-term, formal, long-term arrangements. It's a matter for the schools, but obviously we've got Jane here now as our AD to support the schools as they think about those decisions and what their options are given the financial situation. So what I'm basically saying is that we're going to work with the schools every which way we can to support them in the period while they are facing their deficits, and how they can hopefully pay some of it back over time or think collaborative arrangements which can reduce some of their costs. Very difficult time for schools.
Will the adoption of the Haringey safety valve and the new banding system ensure that schools facing substantial deficits can deliver an effective approach to the delivery of SEND?
Well, safety valve isn't really linked to the banding system, especially those experiencing financial difficulties, and it's not a solution. The new banding system is still being developed and has had substantial engagement from school reps and parents and carers, working with the ISOS and SEND, but also there's been a lot of discussion in the High Needs in Schools Forum, working with the High Needs Block Working Group. I might not have their name right, but you know the committee I mean. So it's being done in consultation with all sorts of partners and parties, and particularly I think through the High Needs Block Group. Nothing could be done because that's how you organise the funding. Drafts proposals of the banding system suggest it will result in an increase of funding to mainstream schools to support children and young people with both emerging needs and SEN, but I accept it's too early to say if it will be the case. That's the aim. And the overall financial envelope for top-ups and bandings remains the same. How this can be distributed locally could change. But I think we're trying to make it more equitable, I think is the key message. I hope that's helpful, and I'm open to any more questions.
Thank you very much for that, Zena, and thank you very much for that, Lords. For any other, I know I did ask Councillor Brabazon to sort of give us a summary of what's been happening since we last questioned, and I know lots has happened, but I just want to, I'm mindful of the time, and I just want to go straight to the question. Members had like a couple of questions. Mary and Lester, you had 2 questions. Then, yeah, Anna and Lottie. Yeah, so we'll start with Mary and then move to the list. Thanks.
Great. Thanks a lot, and thanks, Zena, for your report. I wanted to ask about the Casey report and what impact it was having in the schools and for young people in the borough. And if you could let us know what actions are being taken to ensure that children and young people are able to hold some confidence in the police in the local area, and also what is being done in schools to help the children to and young people to deal with the impact of a loss of confidence, particularly for Black and minority ethnic children, for girls and women, and for LGBT young people. Thank you.
Lena, I was thinking maybe to take 2 questions at the time, then we can, because Lester's question is also relevant to this point. Yes, Lester?
Yeah, I mean, very similar, Councillor Brabazon. I mean, just scanning through the documents that we have today, we're doing the Safeguarding Partnership Annual Report 2021-2022. You know, the police form part of the executive group that feed into that. So just, you know, whether you can talk on the confidence that we have or don't have in the police locally, especially relating to safeguarding concerns.
Right, the Casey report came out 2 days ago, so I don't think I can talk in any great detail about what our schools are actually doing in response to the Casey report, because we only received it nationally and local, you know, we've only seen it 2 days ago, and in fact I've just started to read it myself, so I don't know whether the heads have had any chance to read it, so we only know really the headlines. There's been loads of work going on in schools about knife crime. There's loads of work that goes on in school about violence against women and girls. There's work that goes on about young people's mental health. We have traditionally had police in schools, but I think those numbers have slipped slightly, and I might have to check that with Bev. We have a social workers in schools programme which works with vulnerable, it's in secondary, which works with vulnerable, very vulnerable young people. And I think there's an enormous amount of work going on in our schools which deals with some of these really, really sensitive issues around harassment, where everyone's invited. We, as I said, knife crime. I've been to knife crime presentations about how you deal with knife crime in our schools, and I know they talk to young people all the time, but I can't tell you in great detail what our response is to the Casey report. I think that might be just a bridge too far, Mary, on Thursday, the 23rd of March, when it came out on the 21st. But in order to perhaps add a bit more, I can ask Bev and Jane to respond to that, to add a bit more detail. I just, in response to the relationship with the police have been, in my experience, talk only from my own experience, excellent partners in the Safeguarding Partnership. They contribute very actively, and they also are involved in the multi-agency Safeguarding Hub, are key partners under the new arrangements. You'll hear from Bev and from David. Everybody, the partnerships are now, is an equal partnership. We share joint responsibility for safeguarding. It's not, that was a big change, came in 2019. And my experience is that the police have been very consistent and good partners in all the leadership group and the meetings that I've attended in contributing to the way we work in such a sensitive area of child protection. But I'm going to ask the officers about those 2 things, if I might.
Thanks for the question. I mean, the report is one that should trouble and shake all of us. And I don't want to, for a minute, to try and minimise the findings. But Councillor Brabazon is right. In order for us to give you a sensible response, we need some time. But what we can tell you tonight is that the report does distinguish between the borough command units. Our borough command unit is shared with Enfield, so Haringey and Enfield share the same borough command unit, and from 2019, if not before, what we know is that issues that we have raised with the command leader for our unit are addressed, that if we raise concerns around officers' behaviours and things that we want them to do differently for our children, I think that they have been very responsive, very empathic. I say that to you as an officer who has some experience of dealing with the police from a professional capacity, but just as a member of the community. And so I do not believe that what they offer us in Haringey is are areas that we should be worried about in the same extent as you would hear from other boroughs, other borough command units. What I will say is that we have worked very hard with the police to really start to push the agenda around stop and search. And I know that this committee has heard something of the work that we are doing, and particularly in the impact on children around the safeguarding and welfare impact it has. And I have to say that as part of the team that's leading that work, that our Borough Command Unit has been very responsive to the suggestions for changes. And we have worked, they are integrated, as Councillor Brabazon referred to, into our MASH. They work closely with us 3 days a week on missing children, and I just could go on. There is always room for improvement in every service. And what our schools might say is that the change within the Met generally and how it has impacted depletion of the workforce in the police has meant that they've seen reduced numbers of safer neighbourhood police presence supporting them in the schools. But you may well want us to come back, Chair, with a more detailed response to the Casey report.
Yeah, before I bring Anne to also comment, I think that would be a really good idea to our response, because the report did raise some safeguarding issues that are directly relevant to remit of this committee, and that will be really good. Yes, Anne.
Thank you, Chair. I don't want to add to anything that's already been said. Of course, we support all of that, and I'm not all the way through the report, and of course it's incredibly shocking to us all. I think it would be good that we come back with a report, but I think that must be, in my view, and I recommend to you, a police-led report. The police are accountable for their behaviours and their cultures and for their actions, and I think it would be best that they come and tell us what they're doing for our community. Of course, we work in partnership and we are statutory partners and we will support them, but I think that it should be a police-led report that comes to this board for scrutiny. So I support Bev's recommendation about a report, but I think it should be police-led. But Chair, I'll leave that to you and the panel to make a decision on. Thank you.
Great, thank you for that. Actually, in our pre-meet, there was a brief discussion about, especially in this meeting where the partnership report has been discussed, that it will be really good to have the police partners here as well. So that I think that's an excellent suggestion, in my opinion. But we'll definitely discuss more at the end when we are doing planning the future work plan for this committee. Thank you. I will move to Anna and then Lottie. Then
Thank you, Chair. In your introduction, Zina, you mentioned Ofsted and that this has been a major, a sort of headline item on your agenda over the past few weeks. Recently, we heard in the news the heartbreaking news of a well-regarded and well-loved head teacher in Reading who sadly took her own life after a difficult Ofsted review. And reflecting on this incident, I was wondering if head teachers and our community teachers, council officers who are involved in Ofsted reviews, do they have access to mental health support to support them through what can often be a very challenging time in their professional lives? And if not, is this something we could potentially consider?
Zina, sorry, before you answer, can I take the second question? So we're going two question. Thanks.
These very good questions. regarding the Ofsted, it was absolutely shocking to see, obviously, the story about the head teacher in Reading and the devastating impact that the inspection, but what we know, this is what we know from what we read in the press. And I just want to say that I think for anybody going through an Ofsted inspection, it is hugely stressful. And our team here worked unbelievably hard, well, for 4 years really, because that's the cycle, and it is very stressful. I can't say whether there's been mental health, not to my knowledge, there's been mental health support. Is it a good idea? Yes, I think it is a good idea to think about that because the stakes are so high and the worry. It is a very grueling process. So I'm going to leave it there and ask Anne to comment. I take the point completely. I'm not sure what else I can say about that. I think it is a national issue about the nature of the types of inspection that schools go through, local authorities go through, different services go through.
If I may, Chair, I first want to start by hoping that we can, as a panel, send our condolences to the head teacher's family, not only to the family, to her community of schools, the community of parents, and to teachers everywhere. We can see the reaction of teachers, and so that's where I'd like to start, by offering our condolences. I've been working with head teachers for many years, and although the inspections are short in duration, the intensity is always hard and always high, and I don't know a teacher that hasn't said that the Ofsted inspection for them hasn't been a stressful process. Of course, the resilience of individuals comes in, so some will be less stressed than others, but usually there is a degree of stress. It's also stressful, I hear, in the wait for an inspection. Some of you may be governors, and waiting for an inspection adds to the stress. I think all teachers, in my view, are not in the business, and I know we've got press in the room. I can't think of another way of putting it, and I can't say don't minute this. But what I want to say is that they're not in the business for the money. It is a vocation, and they're there for the children. And so they're passionate about their schools and the judgments that their schools come to. So we note that. In terms of the mental health provision and support, there are those that, there are council services available to those who buy into the council services, HR services, and those who don't, they will buy their support elsewhere. I don't know what that is, but I'm assuming that mental health and support should also be available. So it's something that we could just confirm for our own community of schools. Outside of that, we are always available for our head teachers, supporting them, as is the Haringey Education Partnership available to support them. I won't name the school, but the school is recently, since the judgment has been, the passing of our teacher in Reading, since we found out about that, our school is undergoing an inspection, and it was heartening to know that the parents gathered to buy cakes. I heard biscuits and cakes, and the last I heard, they'd probably overnight, not very long at all, raised £300. That's the testament of parents themselves gathering to support our community of schools. So I know that's a long-winded answer, but just to say that we are here for the children and young people in all our communities, and so we will always look to see what we can do to support not just those in schools, but in other settings, and also, might I add, having just come through a 3-week inspection, our colleagues within the council and those that support us. Thank you.
To ask the question about the bid, that's a very interesting question. I think I probably have to find out from the manager of the bid how their ranges work, but I've never heard anything of that nature happening in Wood Green. Certainly nothing to be reported to me, either through community safety, through the police, or through any other mechanism of anything like that happening here, but I can certainly ask the director of the bid how they operate, and we can get back to you. I don't know if that'd be helpful, but it is quite shocking, isn't it?
Yes, son.
Again, it's just been a dreadful week. It was completely shocking and unacceptable and appalling what we saw. You know, and again, courage and praise to the young person's mother for allowing that video to be made public. Sadly, young people experience, not necessarily from the wardens, whatever they were called, but equally from our police, and you know that young people are handcuffed on, you know, on occasions. It's hard to get the data, but our young people must be treated with love and kindness at all times, and that what we saw is shocking. I think I absolutely support what Councillor Brabazon has said, and we can speak with our rangers and the bid to be sure to see what they do. I have to say my own experience of our bid has been positive when we put together, is that the right word? When we developed, I think that's the right word, our youth at risk strategy about 3-4 years ago. We had involvement from our bid and they were positive. My experience of them is that through that work, when they saw young people out of school, they reported that through to us. But it would be good that we had a discussion with them just to be sure that we, you know, they're not our closest relationship. They're closer with community safety, but it would be good if we could check with them to be sure that we reduce every possibility of something like that happening in Haringey. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much. We've got 2 more questions, but I'm mindful of time as well. So I think if we can make our questions and our responses slightly shorter, then everybody will have an opportunity to ask their question. But I do have a question of my own. Then I will take Amanda, then Mary. And I just wanted to ask at this stage, obviously we're all aware of the offset. Are you able to give us any feedback at this stage, or do we have to wait for our future meeting to find out what was the result of the offset? Yeah.
I think that we have to wait for the findings. Those are the rules.
Fine, but we will have that obviously in our future meeting for our update of the progress and performance of Haringey. Amanda, can I take you and Anne wants to say something.
The report will be republished, Chair, before our next meeting. The report will be published on the 11th of April. You know, we're looking forward to the report being published, and we will present it at the right time to this meeting. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Amanda and Mary.
I don't have a question. It was really just more of a statement. We were talking about the Ofsted inspection that caused a teacher to take her life, and she's a real someone, you know, so with all due respect, we should say Ruth Perry, we should call her by her name. That's really all I wanted to say.
Thank you for that, Amanda. We'll note that. Mary?
Thank you. And it's just coming back to the Casey report, because yeah, I mean, I understand it's very new and people are still getting their head around it. But the question I asked was not about the content of the report, except for the headlines. It was about how we ensure that our children and young people are able to continue to have the confidence they should be able to have in the police. And I understand that the police are working well around the safeguarding hub and about MASH, etc. But there are still issues we know on our streets and in our homes around safeguarding of children and young people, and it would be false for us not to recognise that. But a report like this does shake people's foundations, as you quite rightly said. And so that's I don't want an answer now, but the question is, how do we encourage and make sure that not just the police on one hand are giving us the standard of policing that we need, but also how we make sure our children, young people, which is a broader issue, are able to have confidence. But we can discuss that later. But that was the key question that I had. Thank you.
Great, thank you for that, Mary.
I'd just like to come,
After this,
I'd like to come back on
Zena,
that,
sorry,
Chair.
just a second. After this, I'm gonna wrap up this section because we have a packed agenda. So Zena will be responding. Then we are moving on to the next item.
Just want to say I think that is a really, really serious question, and it is something which I have no doubt our schools, as by our secondaries in particular, will be thinking about, because this is a national report. It's an absolutely unbelievable report in 2023 about the state of policing and the issues that are raised. Louise Casey does not mince her words, and she uses words that are very clear and doesn't dress it all up. And so it's impossible that our young people won't know what's in the report either. So I cannot think that there won't be open discussions in our schools with young people, and indeed there should be, about what's going on. And you have to change the culture. That's at the heart of the whole thing. So I think that yours is a very good question, Mary, and I'm sure we're all going to be talking with them and thinking about exactly how our schools are going to do that.
Thank you very much, everyone. Now we are moving to item 8, Haringey Safeguarding Partnership Annual Report. For that, I will invite David Archibald, the independent chair of the Haringey Haringey Safeguarding Partnership, to give us to introduce the report. Then following David's introduction of the reports, we will have plenty of opportunity to comment and ask questions as well. So David, thank you.
Thank you very much, and I'm very pleased to be here this evening to present the annual report for the period 2021 to 2022. I know that a set of slides was sent through, so I guess I'm talking to Rob. Do you have the slides? Are you able to bring them up? Oh, so they've been passed round, have they?
Yes, we've got the printed copies here. We will pass around here.
Oh, okay, that's fine. That's really helpful. So I will work quickly through the slides. So as you said, I'm the independent chair of the Safeguarding Partnership. I'm going to move on to slide 2, the one entitled "What is the HSCP?" So just a little bit of background. The Children's Social Work Act of 2017 replaced the former local safeguarding children boards with the new safeguarding arrangements led by the 3 statutory partners, the statutory safeguarding partners, the local authority, the council, the clinical commissioning group, as was now the ICB in health, and the police. And these 3 statutory partners have a shared and equal duty to ensure that these new arrangements effectively safeguard and promote the welfare of children. Now, I spotted a hand up, so Chair, I'll seek your guidance. Would you like people to ask questions as we proceed, or take questions at the end of my presentation? Whichever you prefer.
We will hear the presentation first, David, then we can move to the question. But if obviously members have like a burning issue, like wanting to raise a really quick thing during the presentation, I'm happy to take that. I prefer to have it in the end of the presentation. Anne? Yeah. Mary, have you heard that? Your hand is up. I'm just checking if there's a legacy hand or it's a new question you want to ask.
Apologies, it's a legacy hand. Apologies.
Great,
Okay.
thank you for that.
Okay, thank you. So a very important change in the world of safeguarding in 2019, when 3 agencies, the Council, the Police and Health, have joint and equal accountability for ensuring effective safeguarding. These arrangements are subject to independent scrutiny, and the partners must publish an annual report setting out what's been achieved and what the challenges are each year, and that's what I'm here to present. So the third slide, the next one please, is about the vision and objectives. The vision of the partnership is to ensure that at every opportunity the lived experience of children and young people is integral to the way that they are safeguarded, that there are improved outcomes through better partnership working and community resilience, and that our relationship-based practice is strengthened, demonstrating continuous improvement. The objectives set out in the annual report are that the partnership supports and enables individual agencies to work together. We must work together to promote excellent practice across the partnership as the norm. Excellence should be the norm, not an exception. That partner agencies hold one another to account, and I'm very pleased to say that as independent chair, I see the 3 statutory partners working very effectively together and holding each other to account. That there's early identification of emerging issues and trends. That information is shared effectively, and we all know that in the world of safeguarding, sharing information between professionals and agencies is crucial, and that we promote community confidence in the safeguarding system. The next slide, and I won't labour it, but this sets out the structure of the partnership. At the top in the middle, you see the executive group that I chair as the independent chair. So this is Anne, supported by Bev from the council, with senior people from health and police working together to set the strategic direction. Beneath that, we have the leadership group, which is a broader partnership board of 25, I think, of 30 people across agencies. And again, I chair that. You will see that to the left, there is an important business unit that supports the work of the partnership. And along the bottom, there are the subgroups that do the detailed work to deliver the effective work the partnership does. A quick word on the next slide about funding. The Working Together 2018 says clearly that the 3 safeguarding partners should agree the level of funding required and agree where it should come from. The current position is that the council's contributed 274,000. All other agencies together contributed just under 40,000. There's been some debate nationally about whether there should be a move towards 1/3, 1/3, 1/3 contributions from the 3 statutory partners. The official national position is that the government expects local partnerships to make their own decisions locally, and that's really a matter of ongoing debate locally and nationally. The next slide sets, and I'm just trying to pull out some of the key points from the annual report, some of the key performance data. I'm sure you will have read the report. You will know that, and I'm just going to pick up a few of these figures. There were a total of 13,000 contacts, almost 3,000 assessments, over 4,000 children in need, 387 looked after children, and a much smaller number, 178 on a child protection plan. So just aiming to give you some idea of the scale of the business of safeguarding in the borough. So the next slide begins to talk about some of the key activities of the partnership, and we talk in this slide about the Section 11 audits that are completed by the key partners. This is a national arrangement that people conduct audits under Section 11. And in Haringey in this period, we are arranged for 8 organisations to conduct their audit and submit a return. They all did that. In this particular year, the report concerns, the partnership introduced what we called support and challenge sessions, chaired by myself as independent chair and with support from the Safeguarding Partnership Manager in November and December of the year. And agencies were scrutinised, asked to reflect on their processes, and the feedback from the process was that agencies felt it was useful to be challenged and to be given the opportunity to describe what was working well and what needed improvements. Overall, the partnership demonstrated a strong commitment to safeguarding with dedicated safeguarding teams and clear, accountable governance processes, and a clear desire to improve practice across the borough. The next slide goes on to talk about multi-agency audits. During the course of the year, there were 3 themed audits, one on children and young people's mental health, one on children in need of support and protection, and one on children affected by domestic abuse. And the annual report highlights the themes, challenges and outcomes, and also evidence of good practice in a lot more detail. So I don't want to take you through every line of the annual report. I'm sure you've read it. I just want to pull out the key themes. Another key activity is case reviews. The partnership launched its Child Safeguarding Practice Review Guidance in April 2021, a document designed to help all the partners through the process of carrying out reviews, including their own roles and responsibilities. During the year, the partnership received 5 notifications where a virtual threshold meeting was held, and the national panel for safeguarding were informed. We set out here that 3 resulted in a practice review, 2 didn't meet the threshold. However, we used the so-called rapid review to extract as much learning as possible from these individual cases. And it's worth saying that the national panel, their guidance over the last year or 2 has been that it is better to extract as much learning as possible from rapid reviews than engage in very lengthy reviews that can sometimes take years, given things like coroner's inquiries and criminal prosecutions. Challenging to do that within the national target timescale of 15 days, but better to extract the learning more quickly. So moving on to the next slides, multi-agency training is a key role of the partnership. And in the year under report, there was another strong offering by the partnership. There were 2,678 places offered on 24 courses and learning events, 59 training sessions throughout the year, just over 1,000 places booked, an increase of 8% over the previous year. And these are fully funded courses and events taught by professionals from the partnership using their own skills. Planning for the following year, 22-23, the partnership, at the time this annual report was being written, the partnership are looking at a range of new training opportunities, including communicating and understanding children with disabilities, reducing parental conflict, engaging with absent fathers, which is very much a national theme and has been the subject of a report by the national panel, suicide prevention in young people, again a big national issue, and understanding of development in babies. So at the time, moving on to the next slide, priorities for 22-23. At the time we began to write this report, the themes being identified for that year were children living with mental health issues, prevention and early intervention, older children in need of help and protection, particularly in relation to what is now tends to be referred to as contextual safeguarding, children at risk outside their own home, sometimes known as extrafamilial safeguarding, and The partnership focus was to be on measuring impact, a strong evidence base, and workforce development and sustainability. And other areas of focus identified: transitional safeguarding. This is something that the Children's Safeguarding Partnership is working on jointly with the Safeguarding Adults Board and making progress on, and also neglect, working with the Early Help Boards and the Health and Wellbeing Boards. The next slide sets out the partnership leads. So we talk about this partnership across the three statutory partners. The key during this period, the key three people from the three statutory partners were Anne Graham, who's with us this evening, obviously, Seb, who was the detective superintendent leading for the police, very recently moved on to a new role, but being replaced, and we will work very closely with his replacement. And it was Jenny Goodridge from the CCG, but again, health changes and people have changed. But I'm very pleased as independent chair to say that as people move on, there's been a very smooth transition to new people, and the quality of the partnership working continues to be of a very high order. So these are the key points I wanted to highlight for you in relation to the annual report. There are two other slides I wanted to add. Now they're more recent than the period the annual report covers, but so the multi-agency practice week takes place each year. In fact, it's now going to be twice a year. 4 years ago, there was a practice week involving children's social care staff. We then decided as a partnership to make it across all safeguarding agencies, and it has developed since there. So this took place only 3 or 4 weeks ago, but I thought, given you're looking at a report, an annual report for the period 21-22, to give you a little update of recent partnership activity might be of interest. So bear with me if you will. So the most recent practice week started on the 27th of February with opening words from Anne and Bev, who are with us this evening. There was a very good pre-recorded video by Isabel Trowler, the National Principal Social Worker. It was attended by 118 people across the partnership, a remarkably good turnout. Each day there was a busy programme. There were so-called light bite sessions with a domestic abuse theme, with attendance between 45 and 70 people. Very good attendances. I managed to get to 2 of them myself, and was impressed by 2 things. First of all, the quality of the presentations, and secondly, the very strong attendance by people across the whole partnership, across agencies. There were 18 direct observations, including meetings, panels, supervision, direct work with children and young people, children looked after reviews, child protection conferences, and also a number of audits. It was an excellent week, and it's being written up at the moment in terms of developing an action plan and an analysis of some of the key themes. And my very last slide now, just in advance of that write-up and that summary, identifies some of the good practice identified during that week. Good sharing of information across the partnership, in particular the MASH. We all know that in children's safeguarding, sharing information is absolutely crucial. So good to see that that was working well. Timely decision making across the partnership, including strategy meetings, child protection conferences, MACE and MARAC, also vital. Good recording on systems, good and clear communication, and effective use of supervision across the partnership. I'm sure that as a scrutiny committee, you are very interested in the supervision of social workers and children's social care staff. We looked in this event at supervision across the whole partnership, not just council staff, but other frontline professionals, and good to see that focus. So in conclusion, I hope you have found the annual reports interesting and helpful. I hope you found my attempt to pull out the some of the key themes also helpful. My view as independent chair is that the HSAP continues to work effectively with the 3 statutory partners working very, very well together. And I'm obviously happy to answer questions, and questions of more detail than my independent chair role. I'm sure that Anne and Bev will also be able to answer. So, Chairman, I'll stop there.
Great. Thank you very much for introducing the report, David. Before I kind of move to the questions, I just want to take this opportunity to thank you and the partnership, Safeguarding Partnership, on behalf of the committee for all the work you do to make sure that our children in Haringey are safe. And thank you very much to Anne and Beverly and all the partners involved, and yourself, David. Yes, now it's time for us to basically ask questions. Like for this section, obviously, you could ask questions to David as well as to Anne and Beverly are also here to answer the question, our Director of Children's Services and the Deputy Director. First question is from Councillor James. Sue?
Okay, so firstly, I've got a very frivolous question, and it's on funding, because when I looked at the bigger report, we'd got a contribution of £1,500 from Spurs, which was blatantly measly. So could we get some more? But my serious question is, do we have enough social workers, and do we have enough mental health services?
So the ratio for case need and social work allocation is there is sufficient social workers in the system. Haringey has a clear policy not to carry social work vacancies, and so we work really hard with our a range of options and a range of agencies to ensure that we have a very strong pipeline. Another occasion, Chair, you may well want to hear more detail, and I will refer to it in my report later on, around what we're doing to strengthen not just the numbers, but the skills and confidence of social workers, and to retain them in Haringey in a very challenging climate that practitioners are working in. So, long answer to your question, but the short response really is yes. I am satisfied that we have enough social workers in the system to manage the demands that we are facing here in Haringey. And then the second part of your question.
Mental health services. Do we have adequate mental health services for children and young people?
Well, this scrutiny panel heard the first of, I hope, will be a number of reports addressing the very complex world of mental health support needs of children. Our CAMS colleagues attended and set out both the activity over a given period and some of their vision and ambition. And I think the part 2 of that conversation needs to happen, because this is something I'd like to present in partnership with our CAMS colleague. None of you will be unaware of the challenges faced across the NHS and across health services through COVID. And I think that there are still some pressures and challenges that they're working diligently to overcome. But but the impact of that, I think, is a joint answer from us both.
Great, thank you very much for that. I've got 2 questions on the screen. Councillor Mason and Vanessa. Mary?
Right, thanks very much, David and Bev, for your responses. That was really useful and interesting. If there was an area, David, that you as chair of the Safeguarding Board, if there was an area that you had a concern about, can you tell us what it is, please?
Yes. So I think the first thing I'd say is that part of my role as independent chair is that if I do have concerns, I would raise them with Anne, with Bev, with the police and health. That's the nature of the role. And from time to time, issues do come up, and we do address them. I think trying to answer your question broadly, the not just in Haringey, but as far as I can see around the country, child protection systems are under a lot of pressure, and that's, I think there are a number of things that feed into that, but there is a view nationally that child protection systems are under pressure. There were particular challenges during the period of COVID, which I must say frontline professionals in Haringey handled very well. But there have been pressures, and nationally people are concerned about that.
Nessa,
Sorry.
Mary, do you want to come
No,
back?
I just wanted to just come back and say that obviously it's important for us to understand where there are challenges, and I'm sure you do share them with everybody. So I've got no worry about that. But I would like us to have an understanding of where the systems and how they're under pressure. So if you're saying that the child protection systems are under pressure, I know you say not necessarily Haringey, but I'm asking you about Haringey. Are they under pressure in Haringey, and how? And if they're not, then where are the issues that we should be looking into?
Okay, so Bev gave a very clear answer to the question about social workers, and I agree with the answer she gave. I know that nationally there's a concern about there were some figures in the news recently about the number of people leaving children's social work because they find it challenging and difficult. So nationally, there is an issue about ensuring sufficient qualified social workers wanting to work in the field, and that's not in any way to disagree with the very clear answer that Bev gave to that question earlier.
Bev wants to come in. Yeah. No, sorry. Sorry, can I move to Vanessa now? Sorry, my mic was off. Vanessa.
Good evening. My third question was similar to Mary's question, so I'm going to leave that out. I liked your vision statement. I thought it was a very good vision. Statements are very idealistic, and there's nothing wrong with that. But a vision statement without a strategy isn't always very effective. So I was just wondering, in one of the statements was about relationship-based practice. You want about strengthening the relationship-based practice. I was wondering how this would be achieved. Just one example of how one might achieve this in Haringey.
So the relationship-based practice is the model that is practiced within children's services in Haringey. So I think Anne and Bev are probably best placed to answer that. But before they come in, my understanding as the independent chair is that there's a commitment to further develop that practice, and that seems like the right thing to do. But Anne or Bev may want to come in on that.
So our practice models is referred to as the signs of safety. And that really came out of an earlier review in the business of children's social care that wanted to see a more strengths-based approach that worked with families through the acuity of needs and risks. What Haringey more recently, over the last 4 or 5 years, has taken the foundation of the science of safety and then bolted onto that what we now refer to as relationship-based social work, relationship-based practice. And what that means is that we've moved completely away against the compliance structure response, and we really want to understand what affects the chair. What are the issues, the implicit reasons for behaviours that we are seeing, and to build pathways to protection based on the confidence and trust we try to enable with our parents particularly, and carers, and most importantly, children and young people. So the relationship is really seeing the person, the human side of them. It's showing empathy and understanding, at the same time not fudging and being afraid to talk about harm and risk and the things that need to change. But it's seeing you, the person, as opposed to a process that's being followed.
Any
Thank
other?
you. Sorry, I've had.
Just a second. Yes, Vanessa, do you want to come back? Because I was about to take a question in here, but do come back if you need to.
Yes,
yeah.
I do have another question. And sorry, there's a bit of an echo, but I'm just going to continue. Thank you very much for that. I can definitely see the benefit of and how that would strengthen relationships within the community. One of my thoughts on looking at your slides, you have a very structured hierarchy. I was wondering if there's capacity within that hierarchy, if it doesn't exist already, for the safeguarding leads in every secondary school to input and add another layer of support with safeguarding in the borough. Because I would have thought that would be just incredible source of information.
Yeah, is that you, Bev? David.
So I will begin the answer and then I think hand over to Anne and or Bev. The role of schools is absolutely crucial in safeguarding. That's an absolute given. The role of dedicated of the safeguarding leads in schools is crucial. In the leadership group that I mentioned earlier on the chart, we're very fortunate to have representatives of the primary school, the secondary school, and the special school sectors in Haringey. So we have head teachers involved in these bodies, and they contribute a lot. They're very valued members of that. Interestingly, when the new arrangements for safeguarding came into force in September 2019, following the Alan Wood review, there had been when it was proposed to have 3 new statutory partners, police, health and council, there was a debate about whether schools should be a statutory partner as well. And those in favour said it's obvious, schools are so important. Those against said, but in a county council, you might have 1,000 schools. How can you have 1,000 head teachers on a leadership board? So, and that debate is still rumbling along nationally. My personal view is that very clearly that the role of schools is absolutely crucial, and I think that Haringey manages that well by having head teachers represented in the leadership group and effective work with safeguarding leads in schools. Now, Anne and Bev are closer to the latter part of that than me, so I'm sure they want to add.
Oh, Bev.
I mean, I'll endorse what our chair, our independent chair, has just shared. And in addition, we took a decision in the executive and in the leadership group to invite a very well-established head teacher out of retirement, who, just because of the capacity and it can be quite a beast of a field to manage. I mean, Haringey has 70 schools that it needs that we would need to be working with. So in inviting our colleague who is out of retirement, he represents all of the schools. He spends time with the DSLs. He spends time with the head teachers. He knows them well and has been established in Haringey for over 20 years. So they respect him. And so he comes with the authority and experience and knowledge to both our MACE, our leadership team, and because of the gravitas of the confidence he holds from not just the teaching workforce, but from the community, people tend to listen to his very wise guidance to us. And we're very privileged to have that role on our partnership.
Thank you very much for that, David and Bev. Lord, you've got a question.
I mean, basically, I was going to ask a very similar question to Vanessa, because over a year ago, when the last annual report was presented to this panel, I asked a similar question, and I was promised that consideration will be given to the issue of the role of schools. In the past week, I've done a lot of research, and the two boroughs that I've been very impressed by are Camden and Hammersmith and Fulham. And they have definitely made keeping children safe in education 2022 and working together to safeguard children July 2018 very much part of their annual report. It's crucial that I think that Haringey should do the same, because I'm hearing information for the first time with what you've said. And as a chair and also the safeguarding lead, I've had a lot to do in the past 2 years with regards. And I admire the laddos, and I think really a lot of the laddos. But other than the laddos, it is very difficult to get any other relationships going. And I think that really we need something in the annual report to identify what relationship you have with schools and taking into consideration those two documents. Camden and Hammersmith and Fulham actually use the wording in those documents to justify the importance of the relationship with the schools. And also, this afternoon, I've come from a very positive meeting with regards to safeguarding and the adults board. It was really, really positive. But what they've done, Addie Cooper, she's actually come out before even writing the report to have a meeting, and there's been several that I've been part of, to actually discuss what that report should even comprise of. And then it will go to public consultation in May. I think that is the type of model we should be having with regards to this. Sorry, I'm asking a question, and I know I've done a presentation, but I would like to know why schools and colleges and alternative provision, why they have not been a part of this annual report.
Beverly, is that you? Yeah. Yes, David. Do you want to respond?
So I will repeat what I have already said, that schools are crucial to HSCP. We're very fortunate to have head teachers representing the sectors involved. I'm getting terrible echoing. I wonder, Chair, if people need to switch off their microphones. That's sometimes the solution to that.
Sorry, David. I think my mic was on. That's why there was a problem with the sound. Sorry.
Okay. So just to recap, we're very fortunate we've got very good engagement with schools. I agree with the sentiments made that we want schools to be very involved. The head teachers involved in the leadership group have been involved through that in the arrangements for preparing the annual reports. I think as independent chair, I take the challenge on, and would agree that next time round we try and have a stronger emphasis on the role of schools. The partnership clearly supports the vital importance of schools in safeguarding.
Thank you very much for that. If there's no any other question, I just wanted to ask a question to David as well. Yeah, David, obviously, in order to kind of protect children, we know that the previous report or previous recommendation following serious incidents of safeguarding, it was like the partnership was effective working between partnership was highlighted as an important mechanism to safeguard the children. Obviously following the 2019 recommendation, the partnership is that leadership group that's sort of monitoring and overseeing the effective work of each partner and working together to safeguard children. I just wanted to ask your opinion. How confident are you that the partnership is actually working effectively towards safeguarding children?
Okay, that's a very fair question. As independent chair, I see the three statutory partners working very closely together, and I think certainly over the last 2 or 3 years working even more closely together to make safeguarding as effective as possible and ensure there is the best possible working between frontline practitioners and between the three statutory partners. And one of the reasons I added the final 2 slides to my presentation about the very recent practice week, which took place only 3 or 4 weeks ago, was that was a remarkably good exemplification of good partnership working.
Thank you very much for that, David. And if there's no any other question, I'm going to move to our next item. Oh, sorry, apologies, Amanda. I didn't. Yep. Okay. We will take Amanda's question, then we will move. Okay, just a second. Vanessa, sorry, I had a. Yeah. You want to ask your question now? Yeah. Do you have a question or? Sorry, who are you referring to? Is that Vanessa? Yeah. Yes. Hi. Vanessa, sorry, I'm asking you, yes. Do you have a question? Sorry. It's clear that we're not able to hear each other. Maybe when I'm speaking, you're trying to speak as well. Apology for that. But yes, ask your question now. Thank you. It's more a comment to the lady who said something about coaxing somebody out of retirement into. I thought what you meant was, and correct me if I'm wrong, that you were to seek the advice and the guidance on safeguarding from a retired head teacher, presumably, on matters of on safeguarding matters. Am I right? Did I understand that correctly? I think my understanding was that Bev mentioned that in regards to working more effectively with school, a former head teacher has been invited to the partnership to actually, but anyways, I'll bring Bev to explain what she meant. Oh, yeah, just a second.
Thanks for that opportunity to clarify. It was not asking, we had not approached someone out of retirement to ask advice on safeguarding. It was in response to the representation and the efforts that have been taken to ensure that we had the right calibre and skills and experience of somebody who could effectively provide a voice to the wide range of schools, in addition to what you heard our independent chair describe was built into our structure. So I do hope that answers your question, but I'd also pass to Anne.
I just wanted to give assurance, Chair, that this isn't somebody who's been out of retirement for, say, 10 years or so. This is someone who hasn't yet passed 10 months, as far as I understand, in retirement. So it was somebody who's well known probably to everyone in this room. And once we heard he was retiring, we wanted to keep his skills, knowledge, experience that is highly valued by teachers across the piece and governors like. And so, as happens sometimes with those who we are sad to see retiring, we got him back to help and support us as soon as we could. I hope that clarifies. I wouldn't want anyone to leave the room thinking that somebody who retired 20 years ago is the person that we brought back. Thank you.
I think we can probably all guess who we're referring to, but does that answer your question, Vanessa? Yeah.
Yeah, it was more a comment, actually. Thank you for clarifying. I do think it's incredibly important to bring back into, and it's a richness of experience that a lot of these professionals have who have retired. I think it'll be amazingly, valuable. But I also do think that something of this importance, something of such great magnitude, requires the opinion of not just one person. Two heads are always better than one in representation of this nature, and especially with the changing demographic of Haringey, the person to whom you refer may have a wealth of experience, but the old coupled with the new makes a massive difference. So I think it's wonderful, and it has a richness to the fabric of what we're trying to achieve. But I also think that two or more heads is certainly better than one, always. So that's all I wanted to say. Thanks.
Great, thank you very much, Vanessa. Now we are ready to move to the next report. Thank you everyone for your contribution, and thank you, David, for introducing the report and answering our questions. Item 9, and it's Children's Social Care Annual Report 2021 and 2022. And I believe, Bev, you are going to present this report to us. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So the report before you is the Children and Young People's Service Annual Performance Report for the period April 2021 to March 2022, and it's presented to panel tonight because we know that the welfare of Haringey's vulnerable children is one of the Council's highest priorities. And so the data contained within this report really sets out some of the performance information and the narrative as to how the data interpretation tells us what we've achieved for keeping children safe against our statutory functions. And so the report is with you for information and for questioning and analysis. And if any issues arise tonight that we cannot answer your questions to, more than happy to send a written response to the panel chair so that you're not delayed in any answers that you're seeking today. I don't propose to go through page by page of the report. I'd like to work on the assumption that the report has been read and that you are armed with your questions that you're hoping that we can answer for you tonight. But I do want to take you through some of what I think are some of the areas for your attention. In page 4 of your pack is section 5.5 local context. It's we've set out for the 21-22 period what the local context has been for our children and young people, and that section headed up page 69, page 68 and 69, really we hope sets the context for some of the astounding stories and achievements that have been arrived at with our schools, the way that we've met the diverse needs of the community, and some of the residents' relationship with the local authority. It also sets out some of the areas of complexities, for example, children living in low-income families, and we list out those pertinent points for any further debate. I'm going to 5.6 talks about the child population for that period. And again, it reflects what was said in the earlier paragraphs around complexity, acuity of need, and diverse and sometimes dispersed nature of the needs that we're trying to meet with families and their children. The real information around the performance data starts from about page 72, forgive me, and I draw attention to the MASH, which is your first point of contact for welfare and child protection concerns for Haringey. There is a reference there to Ofsted's comment in 2021, where they found that the MASH was strong, making effective child protection decisions, and that needs were dealt with in a speedy manner. The numbers of cases processed through the MASH in 21-22 was just over 13,000. So it goes to show the kind of volume of needs that were managed. And I'm really pleased, Jackie DeFilco is on the call, but if you look at point 586 and 585, we talk about this growing relationship with early help and the strengths that are being built with early help that has helped us manage that volume of need during one of the most difficult period of this, and if not the whole context around COVID. And we reported to you last year around some of the rapid response measures, food parcels delivered, redeployment of work or colleagues to the front door, actually in person being present in Haringey to make sure the needs of families were met, and opening up things like the Mayor Angelou Contact Centre to ensure that mums and babies had somewhere to go during the day when they felt particularly isolated and lonely. And we have continued to build on that approach and fix some of the data in here. Whilst the data is higher in comparison to previous years, the response has not been reduced. I just want to move on through the report. I know that some of you would be concerned to want to talk a little bit in more detail about children with disabilities, and we are saying that the rigour and investment in the Disabled Children's Service over the last year has meant that our performance data is showing a strong performance. The data is an indication of your performance and the culture of the organisation. And so the DCT data is strong, and it shows that we are really working well with our schools, particularly our special schools. Our team managers are based a day a week within those special schools, working with the wider audience of children with disabilities and their family, and delivering IAS panels. The IAS panels is the panels that help families to complete their applications for personal budgets. And we've continued some of that practice, and therefore we are closer to the needs of children with disabilities in those special schools. I'm going to move on through the report and talk about the assessment service. We have had a consistent high performance in terms of the timeliness of allocation and the timeliness of completing assessments within 45 days. You see that the conversion rate from contact referrals in the MASH to assessments being completed show a steady picture. And Ofsted, when they came in 2021, noted that we knew ourselves and that our application and response to threshold needs was right. On page 78 of your pack, it talks, we refer to the factors that we found at the end of an assessment. So parental alcohol misuse, domestic abuse, physical abuse, and socially unacceptable behaviour. The members have already raised with us some questions around mental health, and we will at a later point come back and tell you about our neglect and our neglect campaign as a response of some very detailed work that's happened across the partnership to look at the what we can do to prevent the needs of children who are experiencing neglect escalating. Prevention truly is better than cure. I'm going to move us down to our child protection numbers. And the last occasion that we came and presented our performance report, there was some queries around the numbers of child protection plans that the borough was holding. There was a spike during COVID. With the investment of experienced staff in the service, what we have seen is that that has come down to the level that we expect it to be. And partly some of the reasons the numbers were high during that period was really in relation to a decision the partnership took not to transfer children's needs out to other local authorities, but to hold them here in Haringey, because we knew those families well. And during COVID, it felt like it was a bit too fragile to ask other boroughs to pick up those needs. We knew them, we had the relationships, and we could respond when changing needs started to emerge. Our numbers of children in care have remained fairly stable, and I'm on to page 82 of your pack. The numbers of children in care have remained stable, and what we're seeing is that our ability to respond to the care needs 0 to 25, including our care leavers, the performance tells a relatively strong and steady picture for us. I'm going to move us through to placement stability, which in this current market is a challenge. You will know that there are a number of factors at play. There is the changes to the Ofsted regime. There is the issues with the private sector market. There is the findings of Josh McAllister's report around the need to reinvest in the placement market. And by placement, I mean homes that we want to develop for children being looked after, and we want a variety of homes. And I'll come on to talk about that in the lack sufficiency item later on. But our looked after children cohort is a nice steady cohort of about 380, 390, and that's right for our population needs. Our adoption performance is strong. We have in that period 21-22 have eight children were placed for adoption. We've developed our early permanency scheme, and so that we are working with Adopt North London to ensure that any child that we feel needs permanency through adoption, we reduce the numbers of placement moves they have, that they are really with somebody who's could go on to be their prospective adopters or their long-term carers. And I'm pleased to say that we're starting to see the results of that for our adopted children. I'm going to take us straight to the workforce in answer to a really helpful question from panel around what we're doing to ensure sufficiency in the workforce, and have we got enough social workers to do the job? And I answered by saying yes, I'm satisfied that we do. And page 89 onwards, you see we've given quite some space to this in the report to show you the changes. So we're really working to in our Haringey Children's Academy to grow our own. In 2018, we had one pipeline to one university helping that we worked with through aid our recruitment. We now have relationships with 3 universities. We have our Haringey Children's Academy, where we're actively working to convert and educate, train up, skill up the social workers to meet the acuity and changing and emerging needs in the population. So, for example, one of those needs are affluent neglect, and we have rolled out some training so that our social workers know how to work with affluent families to prevent neglect. The workforce has set itself some targets, and Anne and I have had lots of discussions around what those targets should look like. and we are slowly seeing a reduction in the reliance on agency social workers, so that we have strength in permanency, and strengthen our retention strategy, so that our workers come and stay until they retire. That's what we're hoping for. But with the market currently with the volatility in the workforce market, and some of you would have heard about social workers across the country leaving because of the pressures of the work, the way they feel that they're treated just in wider society. And Haringey has done tremendous, in my humble opinion to you, work to build relationships, not just with our families, but relationships with our workers. So this is their preferred place of work. We reference that we've maintained our, unlike some other local authorities, we've maintained our what's called the ASYE programme. And that means through our 3 pipelines with universities, we take in a cohort of newly qualified and support and train and nurture them up so that they become permanent employees with us. And we factor in having about 8 of those come onto our permanency pipeline a year. And we have left no stone unturned by launching our international recruitment campaign, but focusing on countries where the training and style of social work is very akin to what our universities delivered. And so that page, I think, should try and provide some confidence and assurance to you around the efforts that were being made. And I've only given you an example of some. And I'll pause there for questions.
Great, thank you very much for that, Beth. Very comprehensive list of everything that's been happening. And yes, I'm going to move straight to questions. I can see hand from Lottie and Lords, those on here. And yeah, we'll start with you, Lottie.
Thank you. That was, it's a brilliant report. I'm particularly delighted to see all that information about the workforce, you know, growing it and developing it, and it's absolutely brilliant. So many congratulations on that. My question, however, is about the EHC plans. I'm looking at the figures between 2020 and 2021. We had fewer come through, I think 50 less approximately. We were clearing them through within 20 weeks at 67%, and that's dropped to 30%. Am I reading that correctly? And if so, could you please explain what that was to do with? If I may, Chair, thank you very much for your question. I'd like to bring Jackie DeFalco in, and Jackie who has AD responsibilities in this area, will be able to help us. Thank you.
Okay, can we bring you in? Yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Anne. Just to respond to your question, so you're right to point out and notice the difference on that chart, and it was impacted by a significant churn in the service where we went through quite a large restructure and lost a lot of staff as a result. But that resulted in a brand new service structure, recruitment of new workers, comprehensive training, and I'm really pleased to report that what you've seen across 2022, so this will be in next year's report, is that significantly increased. And for the last 4 months, we've been at 70%, which is higher than our statistical neighbours. So on average, 70% of plans are completed within 20 weeks now.
Great, thank you. Lords?
Beverly, I don't know whether you've got the information, but under factors found at the end of the assessment, parental alcohol misuse, do you have a gender breakdown?
I haven't got one to hand, Councillor, but I can get that to you.
Any other questions from here or on Anna? I'll check. Yeah, Anna will start.
Thank you, Chair. And thank you so much for the presentation. Towards the end of the presentation, you mentioned that the council is also relying upon the international recruitment of social workers. And I know that the government had issued a code of practice for the international recruitment of health and social care workers to address a range of concerns. And so I wonder how ethical recruitment policy has been factored into our recruitment of international staff.
Really helpful question. Thank you for asking us, because it's an important thing. We don't want to take resources from one place and leave them depleted. So there is an ethical code that we have to follow. That ethical code is not just set by the council, but set by Social Work for England. And so there was a number, as you can imagine, consultations that we had to go through before we embarked on the recruitment campaign. The work opportunities in some of the countries that we've recruited from aren't, they don't have as much employment opportunity. And so we are really careful in our campaigns, and our officers go to those countries, spend time with the potential candidates to ensure that the support they will get when they arrive in England, from housing to being buddied up to additional training, is doesn't create more trauma and anxiety for them, because they're leaving their families. And so we have in our ethical approach a generous relocation package that we have allowed people to tap into if they want to support their families, particularly children and spouses, to come with them, as an example.
Thank you for that. Mary?
Thanks a lot. Bev, thank you very much for the report, and I agree. I thought it was really, really good. And it's really great to hear about the culture issues that you're addressing, but also how strong that is being built by. So thank you for that. I've got a couple of questions. Number one is about adopted children, and I know that you work with the North London Adoption Agency, is it? Or anyway, the consortium. And I just wanted to ask about the support for adopted children themselves and for their parents, and also about whether you're following trends for adoption failure or adoptions that don't last, and what we're doing about that. I have a particular interest in adoption because I've got 2 adopted children. And then the second question I wanted to ask you about was about children who are out of school, and how the numbers of those children and the relationship between those children and children who have got safeguarding and special needs. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor. The question in relation to how do we support adopted children is key to our thinking. So, Councillor, you may have heard the expression around life story work and books, and the way that we try to gather the information and capture it in a place where adopted children understand some of their sense of roots, belonging. Now, in the assessment process, difficult decisions have to be made, because sadly, when you make an adoption decision, these are not decisions that we take lightly, and they're usually because of high harm and little prospects of change. But nevertheless, we gather and keep the adoption records for a number of years. We make sure in a document called the Child Permanency Record that we set out something about the child's background, heritage, who their mum and dad was, so that they have a clear record about who, should they need to avail themselves of it as they mature, that they can access it. And the prospective adopted carers and the adopters are able at any time during the maturity of the child's life to access the regional adoption agency, or indeed come to the local authority, and we have a duty to provide support. So we call it the Adoption Support Fund as one example, and that can range from actual support financial support if their family needs it, or it can range into therapeutic in the home family support. What we don't want to do is for an adopted child to be placed and at some point during their maturity that placement breaks down. That's devastating. And so the package that we have developed across the North Central London part of ANL is comprehensive. And we're able to tap into that for families who need it. Sometimes, very few occasions in my short time here, that there has been occasions where we've not been able to make it work for a wide variety of reasons that we won't go into, but those are rare occasions. The other question around adoption failures ties into the tail end of what I was just describing. So the data for adoption failures is kept centrally, and whilst I don't have that data to hand, it's something that I think would be helpful, Councillor Brabazon and Anne, that I do a note to and share with you afterwards, because I think you need to see the data to understand the level of it. I don't know if I can pull it down as discrete to Haringey. It's very difficult, but what we can say is where to prevent children moving into adoption, we've invested in a program called PAUSE. Some of you may know PAUSE. So PAUSE is a national program that works with parents who have had one to two children removed, and we've had an active pause here in Haringey for the last since 2019. And our pause has developed some reputational strength, and we are partnering with another local authority who wants us to work with them to do this, have the same approach. So you almost need a spectrum of responses, because you want children to stay in their families. So you do need a spectrum of responses to ensure that that's built into your intervention approaches in Haringey. And out of school. And I might need some support with that one because it's rather a large topic. I'm not sure how we want to tackle that tonight. Councillor Mary, do you want to repeat the question around out of school, just so we get the focus right?
Yeah, so there's two parts to that. One is about the trends and whether that's the numbers of those out of school are going down or going up. So that's the first thing. And the second thing is about how particularly those children who are very vulnerable, which is usually most of them out of school, how they're being supported, not just in terms of their learning, but how they're being supported emotionally as well.
That general out of school. Yeah, go on.
I think a little bit of our hesitation is was this in relation to children who are adopted specifically, or is it just children generally?
No, it's children
I think
generally.
it's children generally. Sorry,
Yeah.
I just want hence the clarification. Fine. So the number, Jane might be more. Jane has only joined us in the past few weeks, so we might need to come back to you because you're now dependent on me for a response in terms of numbers and figures. The children out of school is not a figure that is causing me concern, so we'll need to come back, really. I think rather than me dig a big hole for myself, that it's best we come back with a response, if you don't mind. Thank you. I'll leave it at that because I'm likely to dig a big hole. Jane is indicating that she has some data.
So thank you for that question. And I've just arrived, but I've just managed to flick back through my notes from when we were in the middle of our Austin inspection, and I was looking at children missing education with my team. So obviously it fluctuates because we identify children and young people, but by a variety of means who are missing education. And what we try and do is we try and get them back into a school as soon as we possibly can. Sometimes they actually move on to electively home educated, or we actually do, after all of our investigations, we're unable to find that particular child in inverted brackets. And so what we do is we have a multi-agency meeting because we need to decide whether we're going to continue to try and find the child who's not in education. They're very low numbers here, and that made me feel very happy as a new assistant director, because I've been in other local authorities where it's been much higher. So last week we had 35, or the week that I was talking to my head of service, we were as low as 35, but that does fluctuate. So we'll have children that will come on, and then that we will find that we've replaced in the school, and so we'll come back off that list. But it's not a significant number at all.
Thank you.
And sorry.
Thank you very much for that. If there is no further question, actually, I'm quite mindful of time. I want to move to the next item. And also, there is no indication of further questions. So, because I want to be fair to members as well. The next item is item 10. It's the sufficiency strategy of looked after children, Haringey's looked after children. I believe, Bev, you are leading on that. You are the one who is going to give us the update, introducing the strategy. Okay, great.
So councillors, the document before you, when I speak to it, I'm a happy AD. The document represents the body of work that's happened underneath to position the report that you have before you. There is much work to do in this area, and there is and we have a dedicated resource now within children's social care that leads on children's commissioning. That is an advance and a change to how things were in 2018, 2019, and it has enabled us to be positioned to be able to strategically look at our needs and our demands, and then come up with the priorities you see set out in this report. So the 8 priorities, if I go there straight away, is really attached very closely to evidence of need, looking back since 2018 and looking at our demand modelling going forward. And strangely, one of the priorities that we want to continue to be focusing on is workforce. We think that you need people who care and love children to ensure that they have stable, safe homes. We've built that into this lack sufficiency strategy, so that our foster carers are included. The connected persons and kinship carers that often will speak to yourselves are included in the programme. That our preferred relationships, where we are permitted to do so, are people we're developing our own relationships with, so we get the best values, we have contracts with them. And so I invite you to read that section of the report, so you can see how closely aligned we are to aspects, not all aspects, of the Josh McAllister review of children's social care, and the emphasis on really building strong foster carers for children. We want them to be in communities. Some of you will know that we have done quite a bit of work, and we have in-sourced, returned back to Haringey one of our residential provisions that was Ofsted registered, having the model, and we know how it works. We are eager to roll that out in our other priorities. So the priorities are: we want to expand our edge of care and non-residential provisions. And by that, it really is answering, by that we mean it's answering to some of the, what we might describe in the business, the softer pieces of work with families, to ensure that at the earliest possibility that we're working with them around things like family group conference, therapeutic input, Brandon Centre, which works with the whole family intensely 3 days a week, that we're able to take them away on short breaks without feeling them put them under pressure financially, so that we can have the people and expertise travel with them to support those families to keep children edging into care. One of the other priorities is our placements, both developing those placements in and out of borough, and really working creatively to attract our foster carers. Somebody mentioned today that the measly amount of money that Spurs had contributed to our Haringey Children's Safeguarding Partnership, but what they can't give in cash, they have given us in kind. So we have access to their sensory room. If you went to Tottenham on a match day, you would see Come and Foster for Haringey that they have provided to us free. And I could go on and on around how the charity arm of the club has attempted to support us. And we have seen we've bucked a trend that other local authorities sadly have experienced during COVID, because we still have new foster carers wanting to come and foster for Haringey. So we want to increase that, because I would like to see the percentage, the 56 children or so that are in residential units outside of the borough. We have done some work with the Anna Freud Centre, and we complete what's called a Berry assessment, and we've identified that at least 20 of those children are suitable to come in the house. So what we want to do is make sure that those foster homes are well supported through the Tavistock, through the Anna Freud, and it's that type of intervention so those placements don't become fragile because of the trauma the child is experiencing. Having that in your home can be difficult. You know, raising your own children can be difficult, but we really want to make sure that the best in class is available to our foster carers as we approve them. And then we have our Step Up, Step Down. We have we're part of the Pan London vehicle, where we are looking to create our own semi-secure for higher risk needs. And what that means is that Haringey in the Pan London relationship will be working with all the 32 London boroughs to ensure that we have the benefit and access to 2 beds. We don't want to be sending our children who may need semi-secure intervention and containment up to Scotland to get the benefit of that. It's too far removed. And so that's a piece of work that we have completed the needs analysis and landed our commitment to the programme, but we won't see the benefits of that at least until 2025. It's a long game, but we have to start the work now. One of the challenges that many of you will know that our families experience, our children experience, is this tension between mental health support needs that lead to admission into tier 4 beds, adolescent units, and then the work to try and step them down from those units when they can't go home. And so one of our priorities is to have a step down provision that holds them when they are no longer meeting the threshold for the tier 4 bed, but not quite ready to return back to the family home. So again, we have a safe place for whole family work to be happening whilst we make longer term decisions, and that's in our lack sufficiency. We want to expand our placement range. So we've already referred to the changes with Ofsted regulations, the way that we're going to have to disuse, no longer place after October this year, children under the age of 17 in semi-independent units. And so we started doing some work from last year to ensure that we have 5 local preferred providers that are willing to work with us and us support them to become Ofsted registered, but for a discrete cohort of our young people that our data tells us. We really want to strengthen the staying put availability for our care leavers. We know that those lifelong links in a family setting is important for them. And working with Jackie and the team, we want to ensure that the lack sufficiency strategy is aligned to the SEND sufficiency strategy. So children with complex mental health and SEMH needs, who have EHCP plans where families are struggling, have the benefit of a local residential short breaks and respite unit, and that keeps them close to their educational setting and the health network around them. It's too disruptive. We've made that clear decision that that's what we want to do, and we're investing some of our capital fund to make that happen. That's our priorities and our lack sufficiency.
Thank you very much for that, Bev. Yes, any comments, questions and contribution anyone wants to make? Yep, Lottie. Great. I'll echo that on behalf of this committee. Yeah, thank you for all the hard work you do, your team do to support our looked after children and our children in general. So just really great to hear that so much has been happening. There is a strategy that you're working on. So this strategy at the moment, Bev, it's on. It's basically still being produced, like it hasn't been completed.
Yeah, it is. My DCS is it's a live document. There are of the 8 priorities, we have an action plan. And some parts of that action plan say green, because it's with the work to ensure it needs to happen is in place, and Hazelmere is an example of one of the greens. Others say amber, because these are tied to a capital project and we have a clear and robust programme management system to make sure we deliver on the programme, and Anne has site governance over that programme to make sure things are on track. And some are rated red, particularly when the interdependencies with other local authorities like the Pan London vehicle. So when we review that plan weekly through the AD forums and then monthly through the DCS forums. So we hope to be able to come back and be able to say, and of those 8 priorities, these are the ones that we've delivered on, and our residents start to tell you about the difference it is making. That's the litmus test. It's when the residents say it's working.
Great, thank you for that. Yes, I was going to also suggest that it will be good to, like going forward, it will be good to hear on those outcomes, like those areas, how well you're performing and what the challenges are. And you want to come in also, yeah.
I am really pleased that panel can see and hear the richness of the work, and so I'd like to take this opportunity to thank Bev and all those who support Bev, because it is a team, we are a team, for this change. And one of the things that I do is I reflect back to when I first started in 2018, and we didn't have this in 2018. And we're really, really proud that of the work in getting Hazelmere Road going. Bev Hendricks arrived. Bev Hendricks saw an opportunity. Bev Hendricks took hold of the opportunity and did not let go. There were lots who came to bump into Bev Hendricks to try and get Hazelmere Road off of her. Bev Hendricks did not budge. And as a consequence of this, we have Hazelmere Road. That gives us all confidence, that if we hold on to our vision, that we and keep going with support, that we can get there for the betterment of our children and young people. These sometimes are small things, but having Hazelmere Road, Hazelmere Residential Unit, means that children and young people do not have to leave the borough. I just think that that's an amazing outcome. My job is to improve the outcomes, and I just think that's a fantastic outcome, that children don't have to now go a long way away from their schools and their family and friends, that they can go local. I'm sorry if I've taken up too much time, but you can hear my passion and my joy for that you can share with us in this work. There will always be times that things don't go right. I know that Councillor Mason raised that, wanted to know what doesn't go right. I think the approach we take is to be completely focused on when it doesn't go right, or there's more work we want to do, that we just grip it in the way that Bev Hendricks has gripped it. And Jane's been with us, 6 weeks? And Jane has a similar attitude. I know that round this table in months and weeks to come, Jane will be there too. Jackie's online. Jackie has gripped things. Some other of our assistant directors are not in the room, but we could not do this without the whole support of people in performance, our PAs that support us in finance. I'm going on because I'm quite still on a high from the Ofsted, so I will stop there.
Thank you for sharing your opinion and your observation with us, Anne. I mean, I just wanted to also say that from how we were last year, obviously this is my second year chairing this committee, I could say that confidently that a significant progress has been made, and that's credit to the team, yourself, Beverly, Jackie, and Jane, who just joined us. Like, I know it's a teamwork, and please pass our thanks to all the staff involved in making this happen. On that note, I don't see any further any other people wanting to make any other comments and contribution. So we're ready to move to next item, which is planning our work program. For this part, obviously, officers, you don't need to be here. But before you go, because this is our also the last meeting of this administration, I mean, this current panel, I just wanted to take this opportunity to thank every one of you for your hard work and for your support, and also thank my committee for supporting me, and last but not least, Rob for supporting us. And without Rob, I don't think we would have been able to function. Thank you all for your contribution to this panel and the work of this panel. Thank you.
Actually, before you disappear, there is something that it might be useful to have your input on. So sorry to, it won't be long, I promise. Yeah.
It's only Anne and Councillor Brothers.
Yeah.
Okay.
Just to say that the next scheduled meeting of the panel, which will be in June, the two main items on the agenda are stop and search and send, prevention and early intervention. We still have at least one more meeting to take place, but that's as part of the review on physical activity and sport. On the 6th of April, we'll be meeting with some people from involved with schools and sports, hopefully a couple of head teachers, Jane, the school sports organisers, and the staff from public health who work with schools. The bit I was going to come on to, which would be useful to get the input from Anne and anyone else, of course, is that the last meeting you flagged up that you wanted to do a review on housing and children once the review on physical activity and sport was finished. So I think in order for this proposed review to be successful, it's probably best if it focuses on a fairly discrete area and it doesn't spread its wings too widely, because I think if it's well focused, that's probably the best way you're going to get some decent outcomes from it. So I think a number of areas have been flagged up as possible ones to focus on. The private rental section, rollout and expected outcomes of the council's private licensing scheme, linking of vulnerable families placed in Haringey by other local authorities to safeguarding and support services, safeguarding responsibilities of social housing providers, and housing allocations policy and how it impacts on children. So I think you can probably break all those down into two main areas, one the private sector and the other one social housing. So my suggestion would be to indicate which of these you wish to focus on, and we can, I mean, that doesn't necessarily mean that you can't look at the other area, but you might have to do it in two stages. So it'd be useful to have some views from the panel and anyone else on what would be the best areas to focus on.
Yeah, two people, Anne, then Lottie.
Chair, if I may, if there's space on the June agenda, it'd be really helpful if we brought the Ofsted inspection report. It has to go to Cabinet, and so we need to get the timing right. But I think sometimes things do come here before Cabinet and vice versa. and we can speak with, if everyone's happy with that, we can speak with Rob outside to see if there's space and what could be deferred to another time, because getting the Ofsted report out quickly I think is important. Yeah, and then I'll leave you both, I'll leave everyone to consider
I think,
the
yes,
housing
absolutely.
question.
And I think obviously this panel will be very, very interested to find out, or to have an opportunity to look at the offset findings and a discussion. So earliest opportunity is the best possible way forward. So I think we need to find time in the next meeting to add that in, because that's going to be really important to obviously this committee as well.
I think when we've had the Ofsted report, the outcomes of Ofsted inspections before, it's been tied in with the action plan, so it will work around that.
Lottie, you wanted to come in regards to work plan, yes?
Yes, I was just going to go back to the housing and whether we just look at one small area or whether we do two sort of deep delve sessions. And I think it should be 2 deep delve sessions. I think all of us in our surgeries will identify that so many issues with young people are coming up because of housing, whether it be through education, health, or their mental well-being. And I really think that we owe it to our young people to do a really deep delve on housing.
Thank you for that. Yes, I think it should be at least 2 areas. I mean, I agree with you that in terms of like private sector and housing, like families living in private sector, their experience, their sort of, that needs to definitely come in, but as well as like the social, children who are living in social housing and their experience, overcrowding and maybe not adequate like space for children with disability, or families who need like ground floors flats or adaptable flats, stuff like that. I think we have to look at both social housing as well, because that's relevant to obviously our council services as well. Yes, Councillor Brabazon.
I have to say, I think it is a really, really important area to scrutinise, long overdue. So I really welcome that the children's panel is going to focus on some aspect of housing. One of the areas which I think, from my perspective, I think is really important is understanding housing allocations. I think the whole issue of allocations, how it works, the bandings, the systems, if there's a child with special needs, do they know? There are lots and lots of areas there which I think could do with which would really benefit, I think would benefit the entire council if there could be a really deep look at how allocations work. I know that's an issue which is something which Cabinet, we're all concerned about. So if that could form part of your scrutiny, I think it would be welcomed with open arms.
Thank you for sharing that with us. Anne, you wanted to, yeah.
Following on from Councillor Brabazon's suggestion, may I suggest that we start the first deep dive with the social housing, which brings in the allocation, and then there are different issues for private housing, but I think starting with social housing might be the best way forward to start. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mary, I can see your hands up.
Yeah, it's just a quick one, which is about temporary accommodation. If we're looking at housing, then this temporary accommodation, I think, should be in there in terms of social housing as well.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay.
That's a good suggestion. Any other suggestion and recommendation? So are we, before we move on, we are happy to recommend as a work plan for the future committee to actually focus on housing and children and housing, social housing, as well as private sector. Farah kind of look into, like a detailed look into. So that's our recommendation. Is there anything else, Rob?
No, I think the next stage we'll organise a meeting to develop a more detailed scope but that will be probably after May, I would have thought.
Okay, obviously this is our last official meeting, but this committee has one more evidence gathering session on the 4th of April. 6th, apology for that, 6th of April. So that will be our last meeting. So I just want to again take this opportunity to once again thanks everyone for their support, especially Rob and Anne and her team and Councillor Brabazon, who never missed a session with us, and obviously the panel members who contributed their knowledge and wisdom and their passion. They were able to ask lots of good questions. Thank you everyone for your contribution, and have a lovely evening. Thank you very much.
And thank you very much, Makbule.